Financial leadership is changing. CFOs no longer record history. They make history. This podcast will help you become a better leader, strategic thinker, and digital visionary. Welcome to Secrets of Rockstar CFOs, the ultimate podcast for chief financial officers. Follow along as Jack McCullough engages in exciting chats with accomplished CFOs, learning how they overcame obstacles and positioned their companies for the future. Here's your host, Jack McCullough.
Hello, Rockstars, and welcome to the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs. I'm your host, Jack McCullough, and I'm thrilled to have you here. You can follow us online at rockstarcfos.com. A big shout out to our sponsors, Plantful and the CFO Leadership Council, for making this podcast possible. Let's dive into a great episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs. I'm Jack McCullough, your host, and by day, I'm the president and founder of the CFO Leadership Council. We have a really interesting and fantastic guest today. Really excited to have her. Her name is Jennifer Loo, CFO of Tala. Tala is a Santa Monica-based fintech company providing financial services to the global emerging middle class. Jennifer, welcome to the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs.
Thanks, Jack. It's great to be here.
Yeah, but been looking forward to it. And I will have to admit, unfortunately, I wasn't familiar with Tala until you reached out. I knew it at a very superficial level, and I gave a one sentence description. But you want to fill in the blanks for our listeners?
Sure. Excited to share about that. Tala is the first consumer financial platform that is targeted specifically at the global majority, a term we use for the 52% of the world's population that does not have access to traditional financial services, think major banks and so forth. So we're excited to be serving this massive population with 10 trillion of economic power. Our customers are currently in East Africa, Southeast Asia, and LATAM.
Well, that sounds great. Sounds like Tala is just one of the most exciting places to work and to grow a career, but look forward to returning to that. But I want to ask you a few questions about yourself before we get into it. So where did you grow up?
I am born and raised in Los Angeles.
And were you with a big family?
I am an only child, so quite the opposite of that.
Oh, not at all. So,
Not at all.
Yeah, I'm in the middle. I have two sisters, so I was like the most spoiled human being that there can possibly be, the only boy amongst girls. But so, what was your first job? And I don't mean your first professional job, but like in high school or college or something.
My first paying job was being the copy editor at the UC Berkeley student newspaper, the Daily Californian. Was really excited to get paid for my neuroses. It was a really great job.
Yeah, paid for your neuroses. I like that. But cool. And then, on your education, you started off, I think you studied economics in undergrad. But one thing that's it's not as unusual as it used to be, but you have a law degree. And you became a CFO, and that's an interesting combination. I'm wondering how that degree supports you in your role as a CFO.
Something that a lot of folks may not know about the CFO job is that it's pretty inextricably linked to legal. I have either managed a legal department or been very, very closely partnered with it. So much of what we do by way of contract review, negotiations, actually relies a little bit on the background that I have. So it's been nice to actually have had formal training around that. I think it does help my job on a pretty regular basis.
No, that makes sense. The other thing, I think too, and, I was a CFO for a lot of companies back in the day, and the best CFOs the best lawyers aren't necessarily just the best at legal and compliance. They're business people, and they think strategically, and they can solve problems. I bet, whether you've thought about it or not, I bet that helps you so much in your role as CFO.
Absolutely. And frankly, my favorite legal partners are ones that are very business minded. I think if you look at the GC role, for example, they can't be afraid of numbers because a lot of what they will be doing in-house is how do you drive the business forward? How do you find the best kind of economics in a partnership, so forth? And vice versa. CFOs cannot be afraid of words. That is so much a part of what we have to go through. The other layer is, I think both roles are very focused on not only helping the company pursue opportunities, they have to help the company manage risk. So I think in partnership, those two roles are very, very critical in navigating a business through its ups and downs.
Anyway, I want to talk. You've had really an interesting career in sort of the LA entrepreneurship climate. And I want to talk about your most recent jobs, and one that's particularly of interesting to me because this company was creating using the tools. You worked at LegalZoom, and that was one of the great companies. What was that like?
It was a lot of fun. I mean, that's really where I cut my teeth in the finance department. Really also started my career at a company where it wasn't just about profits and growth. It was really about a mission. I think that's really where I got hooked on this idea that great businesses can actually do great things. So it was a great place to start for me, and a part of my journey that I've been really proud of.
Yeah, I mean, by reputation, it's one of those companies that's known for having, world-class finance team. And I'm curious, who were some of the critical mentors you might have met along the way? And what are some of the lessons that you learned?
Yeah, actually, my boss and CFO there, Fred Krupika, was definitely a huge part of how I've developed my own leadership style. I learned a tremendous amount under him, both as a finance leader and as an executive. So he's definitely a huge part of my own career.
So your experience at LegalZoom sounds like it was phenomenal. And you were later the CFO of Reformation, which is another intriguing company. I'm wondering what you could share about that experience.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Reformation is an LA-based women's apparel brand that was really the first to put fashion and environmental sustainability into the same sentence. If I look back in terms of what I learned there, lots on the kind of apparel side, supply chain, all of that. But I think what really stood out was the importance of being authentic to your brand from the inside out. As a fashion brand, Reformation was known to be very irreverent. Its marketing was playful and humorous. It didn't take itself too seriously, but it was also very hyper focused on making women look and feel great. And that kind of approach really permeated the entire business, certainly from the design and marketing side, but it even impacted how we built our board decks. So it was just very cohesive end to end. The other critical tenet, though, of the brand is its focus on environmental sustainability, which, not only did that impact the supply chain, what fabric we bought, what dyes we use, it even impacted what pens I was allowed to buy, for better or for worse. So really, I think, it showed how if you have a strong belief and you build your company around it, it really should be in your DNA and impact all your decisions, big and small, which is a lesson that I very much carry into Tala. Being a mission-oriented fintech, as you noted earlier, is not an easy thing to do. So always having the orientation towards that North Star, that customer service, and that brand is so critical.
No, that's great. And, you're obviously very proud of your two employers, the two previous employers, and they set you up for the role today. But what was it that attracted you to Tala that said, this is the one? And, clearly you've had a great run here.
Well, like I said, I love the mission orientation of all the companies I've worked for. I think Tala is the most audacious of all the businesses I've been a part of because they are solving a global problem. And what really attracted me was our CEO's vision. She started out by saying, hey, there's this massive unmet need. Folks that need credit, need access to financial services, but because of infrastructure aren't serviced. How do we solve that? Just so happens that it is also an incredible business. So I think it's just such an amazing combination to be a part of.
Yeah, no, it sounds like quite a great combo. And you mentioned your CFO, Shivani Saroya, and I'm curious because CFOs for a few years now have been saying that their most important partnership is with the CEO. But I've observed in the last couple of years, CEOs are saying the same thing, that the CFO is their most important person. And it's not just being polite in front of me. They're saying it a lot. So I'm curious, what your relationship with Shivani is like and how you work to build a true partnership.
Yeah, I think that was something that before joining Tala, I had to really think about. My first two CFO roles, I realized I do agree that relationship is hypercritical, certainly from my lens. And if I look at all the things that, we go through as a team, as partnership, it really necessitates the honesty in the relationship. So before joining Tala, Shivani and I had a lot of conversations about what it meant to have a partnership. And we realized it was really about being open, being transparent, no matter what the circumstances were. It's not about me delivering what she wants to hear. It's about what we need to talk about and what we need to go through as a team. So I actually distinctly remember over dinner, Shivani said, "Hey, it's like eating vegetables." I shared with her, I don't like eating my vegetables, but she's like, "It's important. We have to do it. It's good for us. So we're just going to commit to it." Right. So that meant that, doesn't matter how tough the conversation is, I am always going to share my perspective, even if it's hard to say, hard to hear, or hard to act on.
I had a boss that said it was like flossing your teeth. So, but a similar sentiment nonetheless. So, but yeah, it's such a critical thing. It's great to hear that you've got that type of relationship, the back and forth. And, we all recognize, sure, the CEO is the boss, and there comes a time when, in your case, she needs to make that decision. But, you need to be listened to as a CFO. It's critical. So, and know that you're heard.
Yeah, it's my job to do my homework, to understand the ins and outs, the risks and opportunities, and present them fairly.
And I think you're about our 45th, 50th guest. You're the first person to have described her place of employment as audacious. So I love that.
We're bold. We're doing big things.
Oh, yeah. Hey, people who play it safe don't change the world. But one thing that jumped out at me as I was preparing for this and, getting into the company's mission and whatnot, but 5 of the 6 top executives at Tala are female. And
yes.
I'm curious, how that plays out. I realize you're just doing your job and gender disappears too, but you don't see it a lot in your industry.
Certainly not in finance or tech. So having that at a fintech is pretty incredible. I think, it's been like that for so long that I don't really think about it anymore, but I actually love when people remind me of that because I realize it is not the case at a lot of places. And, even if you look deeper into the organization, we have such a wonderful balance of men and women. Diversity is just core to our DNA. I mean, we function in so many countries, in so many cultures. I think that diverse perspective is hypercritical to being empathetic to our employees, to our customers. So it's been phenomenal.
No, yeah, and it's such a critical thing. And I was looking; you're absolutely right. It's just it isn't just at the top where there's diversity. It's up and down the line. So, but hopefully the day will come, and it won't be too far where people like me don't ask questions like that. Right? That it's just kind of a very natural thing. But it's still, yeah. In fintech, I can't even think of more than 1 or 2 CEO and CFOs that are women, much less a dominant slice of the management team altogether.
Yeah, it has been, we're excited to be at the forefront of that, but I am happy to see that the industry has evolved. I mean, don't take offense. I used to go to CFO kind of events or finance events, and I would be one of few women, if not the only one. And it's actually pretty wonderful to see that that's massively changed in the last several years.
Yeah, well, you may know, Jennifer, I did predict about a year ago that in 10 years, the CFO role would be female majority. So it'll awesome. Not 80-20 or anything like that, but just, sort of looking at the demographic trends in the profession and then, some of the requirements of the job, it just seems like, a great way for women to make a living. So,
well, happy to be contributing to that ratio.
There you go. Well, the good news is I'll be long since retired in 10 years. So if I'm wrong, no one will know who I am. If I'm right, I'll come out of the woodwork.
I'm hoping you're right.
I'm pretty confident of it. So I may be a little off on the years, but it's happening. So, but now you're in LA, an interesting company. And every CFO I talk to, and perhaps more so in Southern California, the biggest challenge relates to talent, recruiting the best and the brightest, because you're in such a competitive industry, such a competitive city and whatnot. What's your secret to building a world-class team when it seems almost impossible for CFOs to do that these days?
Talent is always top of mind, especially in finance. I feel like it takes months to, especially in a business like ours that's so complex and global, it takes months to train folks to really understand the ins and the outs. When I think about building a team, I would say that I really look for, first and foremost, good humans. We're talking about a finance function, integrity, and a solid foundation on that front is absolutely critical. High octane, because it is a fast-paced role at a fast-paced company in an ever-changing industry. And I would say folks that are genuinely interested in what we do and how we do it. A lot of the technical skills can be taught or adapted, but I would say those three things have to be fundamentally within the candidates themselves, because that can't be taught. And having that combination, I think, really helps us get through the oftentimes long days and nights and the tough questions and challenges that the team frequently faces.
Yeah, no, that makes all the sense in the world. And, you're a rapidly growing company and you're going to, continue to need to retract the best and the brightest to come and take this thing to the next level. So, well, you seem to have a great philosophy. And so I want to ask a few questions about the company and your role in it in particular, because we referenced earlier, it sort of feels like a nonprofit, and it's not. You've got very savvy investors and, you've got a mission to make money. But yet you are serving underserved markets, and your mission benefits society if you're successful at it. But in your role as CFO, how do you kind of balance those things? You want to make the social impact, make a difference in the world, so to speak, and yet you've got to do it in a fiscally responsible way. So how do you juggle those two things that at times might be at odds?
I think it's really actually important to call out that doing good, being mission driven, and building a great business are not mutually exclusive. If anything, our mission makes us very customer centric. And I think that is actually foundational to any strong business. Customers are the focal point. They are the drivers of your revenue, and they will tell you what they need and what they want. I think what the responsibility of the company is how do we bring our strengths, our competitive advantages to really service the customers in the best way possible. So at Tala, we started out with data. That was our thesis, that we could leverage alternative data to really understand this customer and be able to drive, develop the right product for them, and then also drive the economics that make sense for this business. And I say 10 years in, we've been extraordinarily successful on both fronts.
No, that's fantastic. And yeah, so I don't know your industry at all other than, what I've learned preparing for this conversation, but you're relying on a lot of data to assess creditworthiness. Right. Is the data in the places that you go to as reliable and as easily attainable as it is in the United States? And forgive me if that's a dumb question.
No, that's such a great question. In the US, banks typically rely on credit bureaus, right? I would say that, one, we know it's actually pretty imperfect in the US. You can only imagine what that looks like in the rest of the world. I would say most of our customers are either have very thin files or no files, or the credit bureaus themselves are not very sophisticated. So what we rely on is actually alternative data that comes directly from the customer. And that is a huge part of our secret sauce and what we've really built the business on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because you've got to there's a leap of faith that, that a traditional lender might not have. So that's great. But you know what? You're making it work. That's what it's all about. So, but I want to chat a little about what are some of the biggest challenges that the company is facing? And not only that, but what are some of the biggest opportunities that are ahead of Tala, in the next few years?
I would say some of the challenges that Tala faces are similar to every business right now post the COVID world. The macro environment is just so volatile and dynamic. Regulations are changing, geopolitics are shifting. That has massive implications for the broader economic markets and the individual consumers. So we deal with all of that on a daily basis, much like every other company. But I think being really thoughtful and focused on sort of the right risks and opportunities is always certainly kind of what we're doing in our seat as CFOs. So that's been a core focus since the global pandemic. In terms of opportunities, I think what's exciting about Tala is that we never have a dearth of things we want to do. I mean, the problem itself is so big, it's global. 52% of the world's population doesn't have the level of access to financial services and credit that it needs. So that's massive. How we solve it, I think, is what's exciting. We have a combination of new products as well as geographic expansion that we can continue to do to better service and reach more folks.
Oh, that's such a wonderful mission. And forgive me for this question because it's dull, but I'm legally required to ask you it to keep my podcast license. But how are you using Gen AI and other technologies? And maybe Gen AI is not as important to you as some of the other things that you're working on, but you're in a very competitive space in some ways. And so how do you use technology to give yourself, long-term advantages?
Technology is really the core of our business. And actually, in a lot of ways, machine learning and AI is where we started. The thesis was that, hey, we can pull in different kinds of data to understand this customer. We can leverage machine learning models to really adapt our offerings to get the right product to the customer at the right time. That has always been a tenet of the business itself. I think what's exciting is that there are now more tools. For us, we don't dive into technology just for the sake of doing that because it's the hot thing. We really evaluate what will take us to the next level. So the way we look at AI is, one, it's more of the same of what we do. We can do it better and faster. We also leverage AI, or we are leveraging AI to better communicate and engage with our customers. So we're excited about that. On the finance side, the way we see it is AI is here, and it is actually an enabler for us that we really do need to embrace. The goal for my team is to really replace some of the more rote things that currently absorb a lot of time, leverage AI so that the team can really focus on the tough stuff and the fun stuff around analytics and insights.
Yeah, that's what some people don't understand about AI. It's making all of us better strategists because It is taking away a lot of the day-to-day and the mundane types of things. So I want to ask, and I asked this partly because I don't want to say you're an untraditional CFO, because as we mentioned earlier, that concept doesn't exist anymore, but yet you're a non-CPA CFO. So I'm sure you know GAAP well enough, but what are some of the ways that you measure business performance outside of the world of GAAP? So I guess asked more efficiently, what are your favorite KPIs in your business?
My favorite, having been in consumer-focused businesses, my favorite KPI is always customer lifetime value. I think it is the best summary of how we're doing as a business in terms of, driving top-line revenue, driving the right levels of margins, and how we're managing the variable costs associated with that. I think it's also important to note that we're not transactional. We're not about that one loan or that one engagement. We're about how we service this customer over time because we want to be their financial partner. And that measure, as much as it's a financial and economic measure, it's also a measure of how successful we are at engaging and retaining our customer.
That makes a whole lot of sense. So, and I want to ask, I understand your CEO by reputation, she's actually very financially savvy as well, but you're the financial expert in the company. So how do you blend the strategic vision that she has with the financial realities and the financial challenges that the CFO faces? It's sort of because you're like one of the rare financial experts in the company, probably, who also thinks strategically.
Yeah, actually, having Shivani be very financially minded is a great thing for me. It makes my job easier, but I think where things are divided and conquered between the two of us is she gets to apply it in a way that's much more product focused and customer focused. Both of us always have to keep that in mind, but then I take it and apply it to, well, how do you make the company sustainable? So how do we make sure that we're servicing our customers well? But at the end of the day, when money is our product, I have to ensure that we have enough of that inventory to continue servicing as many customers as possible and as best as possible.
I just have to ask you, because I read an article in which you were quoted. You said the CFO is now the Chief Flexibility Officer. And I love that quote, but why don't you share, what you mean by that?
As I noted, I think the world is constantly changing right now, and you can't approach it with the level of, I think, structure and rigidity that I would say CFOs in the past were known for. I think about the finance world, and you noted that a lot of folks had CPA backgrounds, right? Accounting was a core focus. So what that means is it's very much about capturing what had happened. I think the CFO role has really shifted towards looking ahead. And so part of that is really being dynamic and embracing the fact that everything is in flux, everything will be in flux, and being ready to react and respond to that. That means there will be new risks around the corner. That also means there will be new opportunities around the corner. So, in days past, we might have been able to survive off of one forecast. How do we get to this one scenario? I think in our seats now, we really have to be nimble and adaptive and ready for really any scenario.
No, that makes sense. And I don't know if you're speaking to my heart, because I don't know if you know the tagline for this podcast. It's close to what you just said. CFOs no longer record history, they make history. So
I like that.
Yeah. It was so simple and so brilliant at the same time, right?
I love it.
It seems like you and I are aligned on that, to say the very least. So, but with all that said, and it's gone through a tremendous change. It was, I say the evolution has become a revolution, because it was slowly changing for several years. And then, I'd say it was put on booster rockets around COVID. The job has just changed. But how do you see the very nature of financial leadership continuing to evolve in the years ahead?
Yeah, I think you called it out. It's been changing for a long time. It's no longer about, hey, what happened? It's about what can happen. So it naturally is shifting. It leverages the foundations around data. That's kind of the superpower of the CFO office, is that we have access to all the data. We have the ability to interpret it, but it doesn't stop there. It's how are you going to use what you have access to really drive the business forward? How do you adapt and evolve strategy? To deal with competition, to deal with economic change, to deal with regulatory change even. So I think that will continue. It's the one, aside from the CEO, I would say it's the other executive function that has a bird's eye view of everything and needs to leverage that to steer the business.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So, well, one of my personal missions, Jennifer, is to change the perception of CFOs and financial people in general. A lot of people think we're dull. We ain't. We're pretty interesting and fun people.
I
But
agree.
do you have like a fun fact or an interesting hobby or even like a go-to joke that you can share with our listeners?
Can't say I have a go-to joke. My hobby of late has actually been ceramics. I share that because, to your point, a lot of us finance folks are presumed to just be number crunchers and not very creative.
Mhm.
Again, I don't think that's actually allowed anymore in this function. But just to sort of highlight that, what I like to do for fun in ceramics, it is something I actually picked up during COVID at the urging of one of my team members.
Oh, really?
And it's just such a great way to use a different part of my brain, number one. And number two, when your hands are, deep in mud, you can't actually be checking your phone and your Slacks. So it actually gives you a little quiet time to just think a little differently and pull out from the day to day.
Yeah, and we all need that so much, right? I mean, I've actually asked people to like hide my phone on me because I'm so addicted to it. It's like just take this away from me so we can have a meaningful conversation. But yeah, I never thought of ceramics as having that benefit. So, but the other thing, you have a lot going on in your life. You're CFO of a rapidly growing, very important company. You're on a board seat, and you've got a growing family. So, how do you make it happen? How do you achieve that work-life balance thing? Because it's so critical.
I'm not sure there's such a thing as a work-life balance. The way I view it is work is part of life alongside your family, your friends, your hobbies, and the things that you want to spend your time on. So for me, it's about how do you balance those things? And what I've really learned is that with different seasons of your life, your priorities change. So it is important to just check in with yourself periodically to say, where am I in this given point in time? Where do I want to spend the hours that I have, and then commit to that? So it's ensuring that work works for your life. For a finance seat, it's hard to step away from, but that is where you find creative ways to do it.
That's a fantastic answer. So I always like to close by asking CFOs like yourself, what is some advice that you can impart for the next generation of CFOs? Maybe people who are going to get their first CFO job in, 6 weeks to 18 months, or even people who are in their first ever CFO job and still kind of trying to figure it out.
I think the theme that we've talked about throughout is that really the only constant in life is change. Historically, the stereotype has been that finance is rigid, finance is based on patterns, finance is, there's one way of doing things. I think the goal and the critical thing to embrace in this role now is that you have to be nimble. You have to embrace change. You have to actually see that as an opportunity. Yes, it may blow up your models, but that's probably a good thing if you look at it in the right way. And I think you also have to be really plugged in to the world around you. Change isn't just happening within your four walls, it's happening very rapidly outside of them. And so being able to have a finger on the pulse, understand where the world is going, understand where your stakeholders are going and what they're thinking, what they're needing, and kind of trying to thread that needle is going to be hypercritical. So dynamism is part of the role. It's part of the world around us. So the sooner that's embraced, the better.
Well, I think this has just been fantastic, Jennifer, and I want to thank you on behalf of my listeners for, giving of your time. I know you have a lot of things going on these days, so thanks so much for being here, and look forward to maybe meeting in person at some point down the road.
Thank you so much for having me.
That wraps up this episode of The Secrets of Rockstar CFOs. A huge thank you to our sponsors, Plantful and the CFO Leadership Council, for their amazing support. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and visit us at rockstarcfos.com. Until next time, rock on.
Thank you for listening to this episode. To continue your exploration of this role that focuses on strategy, leadership, finance, and technology, listen to more episodes of the show at rockstarcfos.com. Join this revolution, episode by episode. Push yourself to achieve great things and unlock the best opportunities available to you. CFOs are creating a legacy, and it's time for you to leave your own unique imprint on the world today. That's all for now. See you on the next one.